my blog, Rantathon. It's at rantathon.wordpress.com, and it's called My Phobia is Truth. You say REDRUM, and they say murder. And this, I think, is part of a series, maybe, which we're doing on the Congresswoman, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They say Congressperson now. I don't know if they switched to Congressperson, sort of woman, sort of genderizing it. But I think she identifies as a she slash her. But anyway, this is about something she recently did, and my observations about I think the things that some people might be missing about it that to me are more important. Okay, so I'm just going to try to read it as written. It's going to be on the screen for those watching the video version. For those listening to the audio version, I shall try to describe the things in there. There are some things, some links and things like this that I think were somewhat important. And with this, there is an issue that I come through where I realize when I'm writing for an actual blog or when I'm writing an actual post to be read, there's different expectations as if you're actually reading it out. Sometimes when I go back to try to reread an older blog post as a video or as one of these audio things, I realize the way I write is a different way. And problems occur not because of what X is, but because of how we define X. And I think that is something that is a recurring thing. Some people might be trying to communicate something, but they're thinking it's going to be accepted in a certain medium. And then when you switch it to a different medium, the other people don't really understand it in an accurate way. And I think that is a common thing that's happening. And I think the information age is what we exist in. There's tons and tons of information coming in, but I want to move to an age of understanding where people are better understood and can understand things better. I think that would be something that would be more preferable, and it's been something that I've tried to do in my life, traveling around, moving around, trying to understand things around me and trying to make myself understood. And hopefully some of you actually listen to this will try to understand some of what I can say in this, and you agree with me that understanding is a positive thing. Okay, we're getting into the reading. My phobia is my truth. You say REDRUM, they say murder. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez continues to be the gift that keeps giving. Posted some time back about my appreciation of AOC, with a link there to different posts I have about AOC. And I said that Damn Social Bay was great enough to make a series out of this. This is part of that possible series. The recollection of recollected assault. Again, like Trump, whether you think them despicable or decent, and in this case, I think what AOC did seems to be despicable, their ability to expose the socio-political landscape for what it is praiseworthy. She recently had a live stream where she recounted what, according to her, was a harrowing tale of her near-death experience of kinda sorta not really, having been tried to be murdered by Senator Ted Cruz and others, where when the Capitol Hill was coupsurrerroristed by crazed MAGA rioters. So now this is now a term that I've been writing in different kinds of ways, putting the insurrection, the coup, the terrorist, and putting terrorize and all those things. I've been writing that in a different way, but when you write it down, it's different than when you actually say it out loud. So I think this is the first time I've actually attempted to say one of these made-up kind of words that I've actually created in that sense. And for some background with the whole had been murdered by Senator Ted Cruz, there was recently something to do with the GameStop issue and the short stocking thing where the short selling, where some hedge funds had short sold a company to 140% of what was actually in there, and then some people, primarily in this Reddit group, got wind of it, and this is more just regular everyday people, and then they decided to buy the stocks and hold them, because when you do a short selling thing, you borrow the stocks from someone and then you sell them, and then you hope that company is going to go lower. So let's say you borrow stocks for $10 and you think, okay, in 6 months it's going to be down to $2. So you borrow them for 10 and then you sell it for 10, you keep that 10, and then in a few months, like let's say it's come to 6 month time, you go to that 5 month time, and then you say, okay, now you're going to buy them back. You buy them at $3, and then you get to keep that profit of the $7 or something in there, because you're giving it back to the person now when it's the $2 or when it's the $3 or whatever. So in that kind of sense, the person who let you borrow it they weren't going to do anything with it anyway. So there's that kind of excuse. So that's kind of a typical kind of system. But then when a company goes and says we're taking 140% of it, and then gets to the time when they have to buy the stuff back and there's less actual stocks available to be bought, the price rockets up. And most of the people who seem to be involved in this were not even actually selling the stock. They're saying, no, we're doing this to screw them over. It's not about making a profit. It's about just keeping this money. And then that has been misconstrued and treated in a different way. And different people from different sides of many different areas of the political sphere, socio-political sphere, was talking about how they were in support of the people who are doing it. And AOC came out and said, "Yeah, why are we against these people?" And then Senator Ted Cruz said, "I agree." And then she responded to Ted Cruz saying, "I'm not going to," paraphrasing, "I'm not going to align with somebody who just tried to have me murdered in Capitol Hill." And that was before she actually came out recently. I think it was a few days ago as I'm recording this. I'm recording this on the 4th or 3rd or something, but I think it was a few days ago where she actually had the live stream, and she came out and explained her actual experience during that time. Okay. Well, that's the background of it. So when she says she was murdered, that's why I'm kind of mentioning the murder thing. That's why there's the REDRUM and all that involved. There's a lot of information coming in, as I mentioned. Actual incident, the incident is on Capitol Hill on January 6th. There's been a lot of news about that. If you actually want to get the actual article, the actual time, the actual live stream that she had, there's a lot of sources, a multitude of sources that are covering that, and you can go find them. You can find the actual stream and watch it for yourself. I took a screen cap from DuckDuckGo of some of the things when I just typed in AOC live stream. It says here from NBC News, AOC reveals that she's a sexual assault survivor, and as she recounts the Capitol riots. AOC recounts that the terror and trauma of being a target at the Capitol Hill siege. This is on Slate from MSN.com. This is from New York Post. It says Representative Katie Porter recounts AOC's terrifying Capitol Hill riot experience. And I think I just recently saw that now they've pushed some kind of motion where on the floor of Congress, so the next meeting or something of the House of Representatives, they're going to have some time where the different people are going to be able to recount their experience of January 6th and things like that. So, yeah, there is that. I think that's the AOC thing. MSN is still there. And New York Daily News, AOC recounts January 6th riots, reveals she's a survivor of sexual abuse. AOC reveals that she's a sexual assault survivor. That's NBC News. AOC recounts trauma of Capitol siege in Instagram live video. That's from Slate again. So yeah, that's the general coverage that was coming from that incident, and to me as well, that's something that I picked up on. So let me continue what I wrote here. So within the stream, she also confessed to being a survivor of sexual assault, claiming that that was a key part of what triggered her so much about the incident. Now, there's something about certain people that use certain words. Words often don't mean what I think they think by using that word. For example, as I occasionally have 2-day fasts, I would not claim to be starving unless it has been at least 48 hours since I've eaten or I engage in very strenuous activities. But for the average American, they would say starving if it's been 10 or so waking hours of little or no mental or physical exertion without a meal. Relatively, in their lived experience of their reality tunnel, that state of hunger qualifies for the usage of the term murder. Sorry, I should not be murder there, but that was what was on my mind. It's usage of the term starving. So in that incident, that is something they can use, starving. And that's kind of why I was thinking about with this. Maybe with AOC, she was thinking murder in this situation. But let's get back to the reading. I'll need to go back and edit that. By the time you actually go and click this, I think I would have edited that. Okay. So the term sexual assault has been one of the most bastardized in the recent years in the American socio-political sphere. I will suspend judgment until the point she may feel is right to inform us more about the incident or incidents, but suffice to say, if this is some ploy to gain sympathy, it's utterly despicable. I may be biased as in thinking this point scoring is not impossible, and in fact almost expected from the sort of person I think political power can attract. I have long since considered those that seek this sort of power to be unusually despicable in comparison to the average person that choose to make a living in most other comparative fields. A difference with individuals like AOC is most politicians have yet to be as open about what they say and do politically. Now, here's some specifics, like certain fields where maybe it's elected office or just the demographic of a politician. It is a pastime. It is something that someone's saying, this is my occupation. This is what I'm going to do. There's many other forms in order to actually affect. But to me, the primary thing that state politics selects for is the one of the specific things that you can get in state politics that you can't get in other offices and other positions is that control. Is that being in an institution that has a monopoly of violence over any given area, that police enforcement agents are working for you in that kind of sense. You're the ones who the cops are enforcing. You're the one who has the control over people. You can dictate certain things to people. You can have these orders for certain people. And that has been shown to attract certain people in certain positions. There's something about that where they say, okay, you can have influence. You can share your thoughts, but what field can you demand people actually follow those actions regardless of their actual intention to do that? There's very few besides state politics where you have the police, where you have the laws, where you can say we have the right to tell you what to do, but if anybody else told you to do it or anybody else did what we're doing, they would be thrown in jail. That is something that is very specific. So there are going to be certain people who see that as the main selling point because all the other things that they can do, just general social awareness, general charity kind of efforts, these kind of things can be done in the private sector. They can be done as private individuals. They don't have to enter the public sector. They don't have to be a politician in order to affect some of these changes. So that's something that I kind of see in that, and you can see the sort of people that would be attracted to that and other positions. Also the police. The police have that force over someone. So if they just, it's going to be a higher number or percentage of people. Most of them will be good people, just like most politicians would be good people. But I think, let's say on average, certain positions would be like, okay, if you're privy to actually using violence and hitting people and wanting to assault people and wanting to empower, you wanting to that empowerment to be powerful over people, what position would you do? Just be like a veterinarian or be a policeman? What would you prefer to do? Chances are you'd go to policeman because you can actually use your ideation to actually use power in that kind of sense, can actually find an outlet in policing. So that's kind of what I'm talking about here. Okay, so back to the reading. My phobia is my truth. As expected, AOC was lauded by many. Folk came out in sport, because by default, humans are life forms, and sentient life forms are concerned about the pain of other life forms, in general. Much was said about her live stream. People focused on different aspects of what she shared. Did she think it was a protester or rioter, or was she intentionally slighting the brave police there to protect her? Above all, did you hear that she was a survivor? However, some discrepancies came up and as more began to analyze her story. It's worth mentioning that it is up to the victim as to whether they feel comfortable sharing the identity of the victimizer, even if it is entirely alleged. Especially if they are not expecting folk act on the claim to address the issue in any way besides listening. Now, this is something that I've seen. I saw one article come out and say, at least one person came out and said, okay, she's putting other women at harm by not mentioning who the actual person abused her is, but this person might abuse other. I think they said women, but this person, a victimizer, could be across the board. It could be victimizing men, women, boys, girls, and things like this. But that whole thing is one of the questions you ask. Like, if you don't mention who actually did it to you, can that person keep going out there and abusing? And this is something that I talked about this in separate situations, and I want to have a specific question asking people, like when it's different, but specifically when you have been a victim, I think it's that adds different confusion and different complexities into the issue as to whether you want to re-victimize yourself in a different sense, to relive that in a different way. There is that part of why this abuse is so pernicious, is the effect that it has, a lasting effect that it has on the person who's been victimized, where you can't just expect them to just be like, okay, I'm just going to come out and talk about this abuse that I experienced, openly point at the person. There's different kind of things. Like, the chances are, if that person was in the mental state and a comfort level to actually be someone who could speak out about it, the person probably wouldn't have targeted them to begin with. These people are predators. They normally see certain things about people and have a way of figuring out and grooming and testing and seeing who would be in a position for me to actually do this to them and them not talk about it. for various reasons. Now that is part of something where I don't feel like in this situation where I'm like, okay, I demand she tell the world who exactly did it, how it actually happened in that thing. But I'm just saying, if it happened to her, that's horrible. If she's exaggerating, if she's making this up, that's despicable in its own way. But that's something that is not something that's known to me. But as I mentioned here, there are some particulars like she didn't know at that point. With that as a background, I can understand her getting to the point where if she's locked herself in the bathroom, she doesn't know who's banging on the door. As she said, she could think it could be a protester, even if it wasn't, even if it didn't turn out to be. So that's kind of the things in there. But there are some particulars about it that actually can be analyzed, and that's what I go into here. So some particulars about the claims she made are, however, fair game to scrutiny, such as location, individuals, time, etc. And this is by Representative Nancy Mace. She said this: AOC made clear she didn't know who was at the door. Breathless attempts by the media to fan fictitious news flames are dangerous. My office is 2 doors down. Insurrectionists never stormed our hallway. Sorry. Egregious doesn't even begin to cover it. Is there nothing the mainstream media won't politicize? This is from Newsstream. As members of the mob banged against the door, Ocasio-Cortez believed this was the moment where I thought everything was over. See right there? That is entirely wrong because they were not members of the mob. You see, if she said as Ocasio-Cortez thought possible members of the mob, but that reporting to me seems like they're saying we actually know these were members of the mob when they were not. So here it says, Ocasio-Cortez said that rioters actually entered her office, forcing her to take refuge inside her bathroom after a legislative director, Geraldo Bonilla Chavez, told her to hide, run and hide. Now, in this situation, I think that's also been proven that no rioters actually entered. The people who actually entered were not rioters. I've seen some video recently of people in the area of her office who are being evacuated as the actual break-in in the Capitol building was that whole complex is a complex in area. So that's in there. So Ben Smith wrote here, a lot of quietly deleted tweets today. Over the detail in AOC's story that she thought she was hiding from the mob, but it turned out to be Capitol Police. She told it as she experienced it. And then it says here, Haley Bard-Witt wrote this. The Today Show appears to have deleted its tweet with a video of their segment about this. And okay, so we'll just go here and just jump over to check the comments a bit. And okay, so you see, for me, the most interesting thing about this has not been the potential lies or the perception of the things that are being said by the primaries, by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez institution, but the equivocations of the people who are coming out in her defense. So imagine having to hate the other side so badly that you hear this story and have to diminish the fear of someone saying they felt in a situation. How have you not suffered a violent trauma in your life and that can possibly affect you to react to things? Shame on you in either way. So you see, like right there, no, we're talking about certain specifics. Just because someone went through something doesn't mean we can't talk about other things that they've been dealing with. Like we can talk about specifics of the story. Like, is the news story accurate by saying that a mob banged against the door? No, it was not a mob. That's not true. So this was actually even posted out. This post by Representative Nancy Mace is about the mainstream media not politicizing things. This is not even about. She even says here, AOC made clear she didn't know who was at the door. So what is happening with the media? Who is she talking to here? Who is Amber talking to here? So you see, so the terrorist insurrections didn't get close. That doesn't mean she doesn't have the right to be scared. The GOP has created hatred for AOC. If they didn't make it to your hall, there was a real chance she was in harm's way. They were hundreds of feet away, not miles. So again, this is the thing. Hundreds of feet away now, they're showing the kind of map thing. They're saying, okay, some people are saying, oh, this is too far. And some people are saying, oh, it's too close. It's close enough. So this is up to perception. This is now the perception of the people. But was she even a target? Was she really a target? You know, they're talking about, oh, these people were coming in to take down Mike Pence, and because Pence wasn't doing what they were doing, the people were yelling Mike Pence, they were yelling Lindsey Graham. So what is actually happening in the street? Who was actually the target? What was the actual plan, supposedly, that these people were to do? But again, we're talking about the specifics. Was it a mob of rioters at her door? Whether her perception of it was that is different than what was actually there. So there's that kind of equivocation that you're seeing. Then there's this video here that's posted by Rand Paul of Rand Paul, Senator Rand Paul, walking through a mob with his wife, and there's people who are yelling at him. Yes, he's surrounded by police and things like this, and people saying, "Oh, this is not that big of a deal." But when it was Lindsey Graham after the January 6th situation, where he was going back to, I think is he from Georgia? I think he's from Georgia. He was going back and he was being accosted by a few people. A few people were yelling at him in the airport, and they're saying, "Oh, look at the mob! Look how terroristic these people are." These people here, this is, oh no, this is different. People yelling, "Say her name! Say Breonna Taylor's name!" Rand Paul actually proposed a bill called with Breonna Taylor's name in it to deal with no-knock raids. But you have this kind of behavior in it. So the equivocation that I see is it's an odd situation happening with that. So let's go back to the reading. Okay, so what she thought happening inside, what she thought was happening is one thing aside from what actually is happening. What you think of your Muslim neighbor, what you think your Muslim neighbors are planning to do to your nice Christian neighborhood and country is different from what they're literally doing by praying to their chosen God by kneeling and facing Mecca versus bowing your head and clutching a torture symbol of your chosen son/ghost/father God. What you think some homosexual musician on TV may want to do to your kids is different from what they're literally doing by comfortably mentioning that they will finally be able to marry their husband versus what your nice upstanding married math teacher of your son is doing when she asks permission to have his number to privately tutor him. What you think of the intentions of the new black hire your local electrician has by leaving them alone in your home is different from what their literal qualifications and work ethic is versus your family banker that has been slowly grifting you, your dad, and your grandpa for decades. In these cases, you may have irrational fears of Islamic, homosexual, or black people. This may be the case for AOC and many that support her as well. Their threat assessment is just calibrated in one of the many diverse ways a human animal's perception can be. What do her mental instruments pick up on and react to? Take her Green New Deal leading reaction to the global weather patterns. Her reaction to the actual data supporting anthropomorphic climate change could be one of catastrophic danger due to her estimation, whereas to me, it's currently something humans are doing much better under from simple population numbers and average life expectancy and standards of living. As for future threats backed by empirical evidence, I think humans would be up to the challenge of addressing the issue and are nowhere close to being able to effect the sort of destructive changes being claimed. Scorched Earth is not coming in my lifetime, let alone less than a decade from now, short of some extraterrestrial impactor or unaccounted for subterranean volcanic explosion. Or eruption. I think it'd be eruption when you're talking about it. I guess you could get explosion under and then it erupts when it breaks through the crust. Okay. But when she says her January 6th experience was part of Ted Cruz trying to have her murdered, what could it mean if she actually meant something by that? So scale calibration of expectations. Now, I don't know if she deleted this. Did she? Nah, I think it's still there. Okay, so AOC in her continued grandeur has gifted us with a response to her doubters and questioners of a harrowing tale of surviving an attempt on her life. And this is what she wrote. This is a tweet going along with something that Jack Posobiec wrote, who's somebody on the conservative side. He's one of the active people on Twitter who gets a lot of conversations going, whether you like him or not. He's somebody that moves a lot of information. So here we go. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says, "This is the latest manipulative take on the right. They are manipulating the fact that most people don't know the layout of the Capitol complex. We were all on the Capitol complex. The attack wasn't just the dome. The bombs Trump supporters planted surrounded our offices." So you see, he's posting this because Jack Posobiec wrote, AOC wasn't in the Capitol building during her near-death experience. And this is by redstate.com. There's an article there. And let's just write what was added here by AOC. So people were trying to rush and infiltrate our office building. That's why we had to get evacuated in the first place. The attempts of attackers and publicly available communications show that they tried to gain access and share location info on finding members for physical harm. It is also very damning and revealing that the GOP is now digging both heels in a discrediting campaign. It's because they know they're implicated. So they're pivoting to, again, the classic abuse playbook of it's not as bad as they say. It was that bad, it's actually worse. So there's just some things here. It was that bad, it's actually worse. So was it that bad or was it worse? See, like already just with her words, what is she trying to say here? It was that bad, it's actually worse. If it's that bad, it can't also be worse. It's if she said it wasn't that bad, it was actually worse. That would seem to make more sense to me. But let's just go back to the start here. So what she's saying here, and again, I think most of the objections that I've seen were about the specifics. Like my objections was the specifics. Was it actual protesters, or was it the cops? When it was the actual cops, did you actually think the cop was actually assaulting you? Do you think the cop was actually working with these people? Do you think it was actually sent by Ted Cruz? Like, do you think there was actually a process where these people, because these are things she has literally said. Those are what I'm objecting to. I'm not objecting to her perception of the actual issue. Yet she's trying to make it seem like it's about her perception of the issue. No, we're talking about the actual details. Because when it gets to the point where you are actually trying to get people to act on what you say happened, we have to actually work in a society where we can actually say we're working on the reality of what has actually happened. When we're talking about climate change, when we're going to do these multi-billion-dollar changes and affect billions of people's lives, what are we basing it on? We need to base it on actual data, not what you feel is going to happen. So when she says this, she literally says, the bombs Trump supporters planted surrounded our offices too. Surrounded. Surrounded is what the words she literally used. I'm not making things up that she said. I'm just using the words that she actually used and trying to understand. What does she mean by surrounded? Because from all I know, it was 2 bombs. One was at the RNC, one was at the DNC offices, supposedly. The 2 bombs can't surround offices. What they found about that person. So Trump supporters. One unidentified person is now Trump supporters. Maybe the FBI and other investigators have told her things, because this is an actual news story that's actually out there. It says the FBI, this is from NBC News, FBI says Washington pipe bombs were planted the night before the Capitol siege. And this is the only image that has been disclosed by this person. Yet they might know more information. Like, for example, the man who shot, the Capitol security person who shot Ashley Babbitt in the Capitol building as she was trying to climb in through that window. They know his name. They know who he is. They know who he works. They have pictures of the guy, but they haven't released it for their own reasons. So maybe they know information about this individual that did this, supposedly did this, and they've told Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and she knows he's a Trump supporter and all these type of things. And maybe that's what she's saying. Possibly. I don't think that's the case, but I'm giving the benefit of the doubt. That could be a possibility. But when she goes and she says that, when she goes and she starts saying Trump supporters, when she starts saying these are things that you can actually say. Are you literally meaning Trump supporters? How are you proving this is a thing? And anyway, so with this news, FBI says Washington pipe bombs were planted the night before on Capitol's, when I'm actually posting this. So at the time of posting. So shows that the main focus of impeachment isn't just Trump's speech. This is what is showing to me. That the main focus of impeachment isn't just Trump's speech that did not end before the first people were breaching the Capitol buildings exterior barricades. But they're making case that this is impeaching Trump for what he said since declaring his intention to run back in 2016. Because you can actually look, Trump was literally still at the location. I think it was the something pool, the vanishing pool or something like that. There's the name of the location where it was like a 35-minute walk from the actual place. During the speech, he was saying, we need to go out there and be peaceful. You're not supposed to do this. I mean, we're going to make our presence known and things like this. So the actual claim that he caused that insurrection, that he caused this coup, that he actually led them to do that. There is no actual basis for that. But if you claim that it's not just that, it's a grander scheme of things, and I'll try to see if I can find this exchange that I've had with somebody else based off this to try to understand where people are coming from. But you see, it's not just about that, because some people might look at it and be like, look, I've listened to Trump's speech, nothing he said in there. I look at the actual time of things. When Trump was still speaking, we have live stream videos of people who are now breaching the initial barricades down in the field or in the area, approaching the Capitol building. So these people couldn't really have been listening to Trump's speech and then be like, yeah, Trump told us to do this, and then gone in there. You have people from other positions like that John Sullivan guy who is proven to be a BLM Antifa guy and things like this. And he's actually been shown, he was literally there when Ashley Babbitt was bleeding out. Like, so that guy, was that guy listening to Trump? No, that guy wasn't doing that because of Trump. So there's that one little old lady who's in there. Was she like, oh, Trump told me to come here? Those people walking between the lines and those lanyards in the rotunda, where they're like, oh yes, we were told to come in. Where is this coming from? Okay, so you have this. So back to the reading. We get to finish on this, and I think I'll jump over to the tweet. It says this. So the actual known information we have about what happened on January 6th. Take the actual known information we have about what happened on January 6th. See that's a coup. See how that's a coup or insurrection, or that was an attempt to overthrow our democracy to some. Our democracy TM. It's some idea that they have in their mind. While to you it may have been an unfortunate yet expected culmination of a combination of many bad and misguided decisions, to others still it was a conspiracy to entrap and destroy the savior of their chosen by the Christian God nation. And this is for both sides. You see, for some people have that one end. They say, look, this is an attack on our democracy by white supremacists, and that's something that they're saying. But there's some people on the other side, because you go people in the queue, and they seriously think that what was happening in Congress was not just career politicians looking out for their best cause. They kind of had this idea that the United States of America is selected by God and Donald Trump was sent down by Jesus. There's people who literally believe this. He was sent down by God and he's inspired to lead the world to this bright new future. That's how they kind of think of that. So both of those people look at what it actually was. And it was what it was, regardless of our perception of it. What happened, happened. Whether I know any information about it, whether you know more information about it, can anyone know if we were able to actually get all the actual data and information about it, what happened happened, but our perception of why that happened is still going to change depending on the people. So if AOC could make of what we know of what she said, so but if AOC could make of what we know what she has said it was, how else do her known and unknown life experiences color what she claims about other things in the world? And that's one of the questions that I have here. If AOC managed to be triggered in this manner to call something like this a murder attempt, how seriously should you take her talking about that the world is going to be destroyed in less than 10 years unless we do X, Y, Z? What is her level of danger or threat backed up by what sort of evidence, what sort of estimation, what is her ability to actually tell what is going on? Like, why do we expect her to know that this isn't an actual attempted murder? But to her, it's a word that you could use. Yet, I mean, this is kind of what I'm saying. Like, is she in a kind of mental state to be accurately estimating certain things, making certain decisions? Like, if somebody is under stress, under a traumatic incident, you don't go to them for actual certain decisions. If somebody has experienced PTSD and like post-traumatic stress disorder, or they're in a situation, you recognize that this person is not in an appropriate mental state to actually deal with certain things. Part of the objections people had to Trump were saying, oh, he's not in an appropriate mental state to lead. He can't actually be trusted with his things because he gets triggered. He doesn't have an accurate perception of reality. And I think one thing you'd expect from politicians, right? I would hope. I think that at least some people claim they expect that, is some kind of understanding of what the actual reality of the world actually is. So let me see if I can find this. Somebody here wrote this. Yeah, this guy left from the dial. This was in a conversation. Like, somebody posted this. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez paid this, and then this person posted this. This is a response thread that I decided to jump in on because I was rather interested in what went on. And this was under Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez talking about how the Jack Posobiec issue was people making things up, and so this comes here. So AOC receives regular death threats from far-right extremists who are violently obsessed with her. They stormed her workplace with the intention of harming her and her colleagues. Her reaction is totally understandable, regardless of where her office is located. And this is the responses, and my replies come in here. one of the responses here is they're essentially saying that because she managed to be unreachable, she wasn't even there. So she successfully got in a position which meant they didn't attack her. Therefore, her story had to be made up. This is the argument, a classic: damned if you live, damned if you die. And then they said this. Left of the dial came back, said, I wonder if on some level they can't accept the consequences of the violence they've unleashed participated in. So they cope by turning AOC into a liar. If it's true, what does that say about their worldview? Or maybe they're sociopaths and I'm giving them too much credit. My response to them on that thread was, okay, they said they can't accept the consequences of the violence they've unleashed or participated in. So they, even if they're not physically present in the complex, just in general supportive of Trump, unleashed/participated as AOC, just being in the general complex was a primary target. And then my response to them, their response said, we all, including myself in this, bear some degree of responsibility for the impact of our politics/ideology. Not equal responsibility, of course. Someone sitting in their room posting conspiracies is not the same as someone rioting, but insurrections don't happen in a vacuum. So you see, to this person, it is an insurrection to them. So I said, thanks for the response. You said they, not we. Who are these? So who are these potential sociopaths? Most of the 200K plus that went there or on that day, or are John Sullivan and Ashley Babbitt those responsible people who you give too much credit to? I wonder about the dismissive language being used or if it's slang. And then they write here, why would I type we when I was referring to far-right extremists? Not completely clear on what you're asking, but I think anyone who participates in QAnon or claims that the election was stolen bears responsibility for the riot. And my response to that was posting this. I asked and quoted you about the they that they used there, and I see earlier they wrote the insurrectionists or the far outright people in the original post, so I give my apologies to that there, and maybe I didn't make that connection. So then they said, then you come with the response of we, which may include me in your estimation. Was trying to understand how you hold X people responsible for Y things that Z people do. So anyone who says that and was heard by a rioter, or just saying, because this is the kind of thing that I'm saying, like, does he mean people who just say it? If I said it was stolen on my own and nobody actually heard me, nobody actually listened to me do it, do I hold some kind of thing? Maybe he thinks like, if I say it, then somebody else hears it, then somebody else hears it, and somebody else hears it, and then that person is somebody in queue, and they says, oh yeah, I heard it from this person, and that person said it. So how far is this connection? And this is the thing, like, I understand we're earthlings, we're a human kind of species, we're in there. But when they talk about that thing, and I said, I don't project my definition of terms on others, and problems occur not because of what X is, because of how we define X, which is why I ask. And I accept that Michael Moore's identification and behavior as politically on the left. This isn't what coping with alt-right ideation is. And this is a video of Michael Moore showing people getting evacuated, and he says AOC's office building being evacuated at the exact time of the riots happening across the street of the Capitol. How did she ever manage to survive? And you see, this is the thing. I think there's a confusion here. Her perception is one thing. What people are talking about is the actual data. Was she actually in that office in that situation? Were they actually rioters knocking on her door? If they weren't, just like I mentioned, the Muslims who are just praying to their God, they're not necessarily trying to directly destroy your Christian country. The black electrician in your house is not going to steal your stuff because he's black. When you're talking about those kind of people, the homosexual couple, the homosexual celebrities are just happy being married together, and they just want to share that joy with their fans and everything. He's happy that it's not legally allowed. He's not trying to destroy the nuclear family. But if you think those things from those relatively benign choices that individuals make, and you connect them to the people who might share some traits with those people, some beliefs with those people, who actually are actively trying to do those things, because there are black people who would steal from your house. There are homosexual people who are pushing some kind of agenda and are very against the traditional kind of nuclear family idea. There are Muslims who are actually fundamentalists and will actually say, we actually going to read our Quran and say, we are the only religion, other religions are apostates, other religions are infidels, we need to actually take over and we need the world to have a global caliphate. But if you connect someone who says, simply, somebody who believes this is responsible for that, why aren't you holding this across the board? Why aren't you holding hip-hop culture across the board? Why aren't you holding all homosexual people across the board? Why aren't you holding all people who are Muslim across the board, to say these are all people who are responsible for the few violent people, the few people who act on it. And I don't see that practicality being actually done in there by some people, with this person in specific here. Then when it comes to the actual cases, when you actually say, this happened to me, Trump supporters did this, and that's why we are actually holding Trump accountable and impeaching him and preventing him from holding office, is because we can track this to Trump supporters. We can track this to support of Trump. When you start trying to make that case, you actually have to provide the actual evidence. People have to be able to actually look and see what you said. Because if you're just saying things for the sake of saying things, then how come I'm not able to hold Democrats responsible, hold everybody involved, the Breonna Taylor incident, responsible for these people right here who are surrounding Senator Rand Paul? When Senator Rand Paul was assaulted in his home, I've seen people joke, oh, that person should have finished him off. He had a piece of his lung or something was injured. When he was at the baseball stadium and he was shot at, Senator Scalise was actually shot, and there was other staffers there, he was shot by someone who was an avowed Bernie supporter. Should I hold Bernie Sanders responsible for that? Where is the responsibility thing going to end? And that's just a question that I just have for some of these people. And again, like I'm saying, I think one of the positives of AOC, and I have a link here to the primary video that I have of this, Newbies' Attitude, talking about certain people, certain politicians. Like right now they're talking about how Marjorie Taylor Greene or something like that needs to get booted out because of the things she's insinuated about Jewish space lasers or some things like that. Like they're talking about, was it... People are characterizing a Jewish space laser, but I think what she was saying something about like how there was some lights, some Israeli company or something like that, IDF company was talking about some satellite lasers and things like that, and things like, so now they call them Jewish. And anyway. So anyway, with that whole situation, they're saying that might have been part of the cause of some of the wildfires, and they're saying, okay, that is language that is going to get somebody booted off of their actual committees, whatever you want to call it. So they're talking about Ilhan Omar, because she said things like, oh, we keep talking about 9/11. Some people did something, and that can be misconstrued in a certain way. So you have people like this coming out, and they're not as politically savvy as your Nancy Pelosi's, who have ways out, as your Fauci's, who can make a statement about something but say, I was never completely 100% declarative on that, so saying that at that time, due to the information that we had, and this new information has come, and then now we're changing this, and I just said it makes common sense. I didn't say it's like scientific evidence to show this, so there's common sense, but there's no actual thing with this, so you don't have to do this, but I'm just saying, hey, it's common sense if we do this. Those people are wily. When you have the Fauci's, when you have these people who've been in politics for 40 years and things like this, for hundreds, you put the combined, like, I think Pelosi's been in politics for at least 35 years. Fauci's been in there for like 48 years. You look at even the Maxine Walters type of people, they have some wily nature to them. And also with their age, other people can look at them and say, that's just an old person moment. That's different. We're not going to judge. They speak in a different way. It's a different time. There's a way to equivocate and make excuses for them. But when it comes down to these younger, hipper kind of people, you can't really give them that excuse. But at the same point, they're saying, okay, what Ilhan Omar said, that's different. What she said was in the context. But what Marjorie Taylor Greene said, we got to boot her out. So you have these kind of people red-pilling people. You have someone like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez using that kind of victim kind of thing where she says, this happened to me. This is my lived experience. Her lived experience is valid. It's her lived experience. But for me to act on that lived experience, I need more evidence. I can't just tell you Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez called me a nigger and we need to kick her out. People are like, where's the evidence of her actually doing that? Yeah, there needs to be evidence if you're actually going to kick her out. But if it's my lived experience that she insinuated that I was that by her not responding to my to my tweet, like she seems to respond to. I look at the people response. Look, she responds to these white people, and then like she doesn't respond to people of color, and like I'm like this, and like oh she hates immigrants, and I could say that. That could be my lived experience. Doesn't mean it's accurate. Doesn't mean it's something that anybody should act on. Does it change it from being my lived experience? No. So your phobias are your truths. You might say REDRUM, and then somebody might look at the world in a different way and see murder. Those letters are those letters. Whoever wrote those letters had different intentions, but your point of view on seeing it is going to change the thing. The things people have phobias on, some people say this is a phobia, and because they don't have certain information. Some people have never met Muslims. So they see Muslims, they see certain news from Muslims, and they see that violent type of thing, and they believe that's what all Muslims are. Then from there, they might see that threat to all of them. So people have heard certain stories of Trump supporters, and then they think, okay, this is all what they are. So people hear certain ideas of people and think this is the kind of thing. So those phobias are their truths in their reality tunnels. Those are based off of things that they consider are true. But your phobia is your truth. Your phobia is not the truth. That's the difference. My phobia is my truth. My phobia might not be based on the truth, because if it comes down to it, it's a phobia if it's not based on truth. So she seems to have a phobia here. Some people have phobias about certain things. I think I'm just going to wind that down here. Let me know what you thought about this. I think I've done some other posts, some other recent posts that I've done that I was thinking, okay, I'm going to read these out, trying to work out how I'm going to be doing this kind of reading thing. Because normally I just have an idea in my mind, and I just kind of do the video, or I do some kind of reading instead of reading the things that I wrote. And I'm trying to get better at writing in a way that if I was going to read it out, it's a similar way. And I don't know if that's going to change my writing for the better or for the worse, but this is a process that I'm going to be working with. Let me know what you think. Like, share, subscribe. Through links to a merchandise store or wherever you can find this. Some of the things like the covers of some of these images, I'm going to try to figure out which covers and which kind of things can be actually posted as actual merchandise and things like this. In the other video that I had, there's a speed drawing of this actual cover of the squad and things like that. I also have a separate channel that just has speed drawings and more art related stuff. But let me know what you think about this. Let me know what you think about what AOC said, the reaction to it. Do you think people are being too harsh on her? Do you think she was kind of making stuff up? Where do you stand on this? Where do you find yourself on this incident, on this situation? Till next time, goodbye.